Hey, this is Jamil Said, the Muaddhin. Just got done making history. 50 states, 35 days. Please join me on this historic journey across America. What inspired you to do something like this? Because obviously this is not something easy to pull off. So when I was very young, I had this idea, I had this vision that maybe one day I would be able to make the Adhan across the United States. And for me, at that time, that was like an impossible task. And different people have different dreams. Somebody wants to be a superstar NBA player. Another person wants to be an astronaut that makes it to the moon. Someone wants to be an inventor. For me, that's really what I wanted to do. So one of the things that's happening right now in the Muslim world is people are demonizing Muslims. They're creating this negative narrative, a false narrative that has absolutely nothing to do with the tenets of the religion of Islam. And so we have an opportunity to go ahead and set this record right. We have the ability to author our own narrative. We have the ability to tell our own stories. Muslims have been around the United States since before Columbus. And then the enslaved African came on the ship. And then we had the civil rights movement, and lastly we have the immigrants, making contributions. And you're talking about 23% of the world's population. And Muslims are everywhere. They're healthcare practitioners, they're educators. They are the people who will drive you from your house to the airport. They're the people who give you your food, and you interact with them all the time. We had an opportunity to trek across the United States from community to community and ask people, ask community leaders to tell us about what type of positive contributions they're making in society. Because the reality of the matter is that Muslims are making positive contributions across the world, across the United States and across their communities, but most people don't know about it, they don't hear about it. The Adhan is actually the call to prayer. Historically speaking, people of different faiths have always used different types of means to call their congregation to prayer. Christians have used bells, the Jewish community has used horns, and other people have used other means. But the Muslims, we use our human voice. The human voice is something very special. The Muaddins all across the world dedicate themselves towards the craft of perfecting and beautifying the Adhan. And if you ever hear the Adhan, it's impossible that you wouldn't be touched by it. It reaches the very deep parts of a person's soul. Cat Stevens is a very, very famous personality in the music world, and he was vacationing one day in the Middle East, and he heard the call to prayer, and he inquired about it. And so the person, explained it to him the best way that he possibly could. He said, this is actually like the song of God. And that was actually Cat Stevens' introduction to Islam. And if you read about him in his Wikipedia page, he'll tell you that that was the reason why he actually converted, to Islam. He's actually probably the only rock and roll Hall of Famer that we have, the Muslim community has. So in today's day and age where Islam is being villainized and we're being associated with acts of terrorism, extremists, and really oppression, a lot of these accusations were addressed 1,500 years ago. An interesting incident occurred while I was on the beach of Hawaii early in the morning around when the sun was rising, is that I was walking on the sand and ran into a guy and his wife, and he was a ukulele enthusiast, and so we got to talking and gave me a really quick lesson on the ukulele, and I thought that was pretty neat. I was in an a cappella choir when I was in high school and used to play the Indian instruments which were there, and I thought it was pretty cool. And he asked me why I was there, and then I had an opportunity to pull out my iPhone and pulled up the NBC's article, and I shared with him that I'm on this trip making history across the United States and that I'm from the Islamic faith, and I'm a mu'adhin, a person who makes the call to prayer. So he played a little bit of the ukulele for me and gave me some lessons, and then he wanted to hear the call to prayer from me. So I made the call to prayer right then and there on the beach, and it was an amazing exchange because he opened up his mind and his heart, and I opened up my mind and my heart, and we had an opportunity to connect. And it was a very pleasant connection. It was a very pleasant experience. We exchanged phone numbers, we took pictures, and we enjoyed a nice stroll on the beach together, in Honolulu, Hawaii, on the Disney resort of Aulani. Muslims have a lot in common with Christianity. A lot of people don't realize that we also believe in Jesus Christ. It's actually a prerequisite to being Muslim, and you're actually not even Muslim unless you believe in him. We believe in the virgin birth. We believe that he was actually taken up to heaven. We believe that he's going to come back, and actually we have to follow him. We're obligated to follow him when he does. This state of Montana actually didn't even have a masjid. The first place that we came to was the house of the imam, and he talked about how they would gather in his house for long periods of time. And sometimes they would go ahead and pray on campus because the MSA was able to go ahead and secure a room. And other times they would go to this veterinarian's backyard and pray over there. And as funny as this may sound, the place where I actually made the call to prayer was actually in the middle of like a studio type of hotel room, that was owned by, a Muslim. And, it's, it seems a little funny, but the reality of the matter is that as I was there and eating the food that the imam's mother had put together and, congregating with these people, some of them were students and some of them were professionals and some of them were entrepreneurs. We're all sitting and gathering on the ground and on the chair. I promised myself that if I ever had the opportunity, I would champion this masjid. They should be supported. They should have a masjid in Montana. So Billings, Montana. Never forget that place.